Now, if you're already subscribed to the channel, you've probably seen this. Now, this I ordered from Classic Industries. This is the full floor pan. This right here is going to be a complete new car. Well, today we're going to be assembling this right here and putting it together. So as you can see behind me here, these are some pieces that I've ordered for this. Now these are the full door frame structures for 67.8 Fastback. I'm not going to be using these on this floor pan, but I will be using all of this structure here, and I've got the front structure there, of course. What I'll be using for this project is these over here. Now I've assembled this one. I still got to make some finishing welds. Got the dash panel over there, engine, all the old parts out of a coupe car. But these are what I'm going to opt in for on this car. I'm using the structure that you have to weld yourself. Now these kits here are a lot cheaper, and if you want to check out the rundown of this kit, you can check that out on my previous video. But all this kit right here is for the car that's in there, the Coyote car. If you're not a member, go ahead and become a member now by hitting that subscribe button and notification bell so that you'll be the next one as soon as I upload a video to get that video as soon as it's uploaded. Okay, we're gonna set our side that we've somewhat completed onto this side rail here. This is the inner rocker panel for the side structure. This right here is the complete floor pan that you can buy. You can do these piece by piece if you want instead of buying them assembled, but more work involved. So we're going to be setting our structure up the sides of this inner here. So the inner structure here has these little bevels that are stamped out into our inner rocker. Now those bevels kind of gives you a lineup dial on exactly where that rocker panel is going to sit. So I'm going to go ahead and get those set into place. One thing you're going to need is you're going to need a whole lot of these right here, clamps, to get them clamped into position, and you want to make sure they're exactly where they need to be before you do any welding, because you don't want to weld it crooked. So, dive right in, get that panel put in place. Okay, I've set the side piece down. I have added this piece in here, just tacked it in just for place to screw it in. Now I'm going to use my hole punch here, and I'll be using that to punch all the holes. And I'll set this side panel up against that inner rocker, screw it in place, and then whenever it's exactly where I need it, I'll clamp it next to the hole and I'll put a weld. So now, it's just a matter of going all the way down it. Right now that I've got all my holes punched, I'm going to get this on the panel side, sit right back into place. And there's some clamps. That'll hold it in place for now. Now, I'm going to be putting some screws all the way around this to hold this in place. Before I put any welds in it, I got to get that other side formed up and made into a structure, and then get these crossbars, the front and rear, put in. And then once I know it's square, then I can start putting some welds in. Okay, now we're talking side inner and outer wheelhouses. What I've done, I've just used this little hole that's in it in the front, and there's also one in the back to level these up, and I've just put screws in these. So now I'm just going to sit these in to see how they fit. So using the front side, I'm going to sit it down inside the rocker right here, and as I go to slide it up, pull the side panel over, slide it up in there. Now the flange here should go on the inside of this panel right here. So once you put it in there, you can kind of move it around, get where it needs to be. And as you can see, it sits flush right up against that right there. And it's going all the way down into my rocker panel. So now I'm just going to screw this into place, and I can sit a quarter panel on this and see how well the quarter panel will fit to this fender wheelhouse here. And if it fits good to the wheelhouse and it fits good to this B-pillar and to the roof section, I know this right here is where it should be. Okay, this wheel tub is just sitting in here. It's not screwed in, it's not bolted in, anything like that. So before we do any welding at all on this wheelhouse, I want to make sure that this wheelhouse surround is going to be the same exact arch and fit flush to our quarter panel. Okay, here's my quarter panel. It's going to sit up against the roof line. I get exactly where it should be. For that wheel tub here, I want to make sure that it sits flush all along the inside of this quarter. Now I know seems like a lot more work, but I want to make sure this car is exactly where it should be and everything's going to go exactly where it needs to be. Now I've already made some holes in this section right here for my welds to go through, but when you get these side panels or these floor panning, and you'll notice, the sides can be moved up and down and persuaded. Well, this section here, the firewall, it goes under this panel. So you want to make sure you raise that up enough that your firewall can slide up in underneath that. So that's what I'm doing right this second. Okay, now as you can see, I've got it slid underneath the floor pan itself between the lower frame rails there and the floor pan. So there is a gap on both sides right here and right there. I'll have to center this right here up and bring everything in to where it needs to be. Now, of course, this will have to be moved down and then the side brought all the way in till it buttons up to it. But for the most part, you just got to sit in here in place. Don't weld anything just yet. Just self-tap screw it, and then you'll have to measure all this to make sure it's where it needs to be. Okay, right here, your side section. So you should be able to put this right here all the way down flat. This right here should sit flush with the top of this, and then that should sit flush on the inside of this channel here. Now I'll probably have to push this right here in a little more, pull it down, push that in and clamp it. And that should be where it needs to be. Tighter. All right, now I can take this clamp, tighten it up. There it is. So now this right here is flush all the way with the inside of this channel. It's flush right along the top here. So when I put my lower cowling on here, it should sit flush, which we'll check that. So I'm going to put a screw in here and a screw right in here. Okay, we've got to the point of this section. Now I did set this front roof cross brace bar on there, and what I did, I measured from the bottom of the corner of the glass and to the top of the glass off of a coupe car that I had sitting outside to get my measurements, and this is just basically I clamped it, screwed it just like I did everything else. Okay, now we have our front roof brace on. We haven't gotten the rear brace on just yet. Now before I do that, I'm going to set these quarters and this trap door into place. So just sitting this into place, your flare right here will sit right up against your trap door. So that's what we'll be doing right now, sitting this into place. Alright, now I'm not going to put any screws in this. I'm not going to do anything with this just yet. This is our rear opening, which our window will sit up against. We have our rear deck filler panel that goes between the trunk lid and the back glass. So this right here is just sitting in place. Next thing I'm gonna do, this kindly gets my sides where they need to be so that I can get my rear section of the roof in place and then measure it where it should be. Now, on getting that rear section in place, the best way to do this is when you set it on there, set your roof panel on top of it and make sure that your roof panel sits flush against the side rails of your body. And once you know they sit exactly where they need to be, then you can put some tacks on the inside or some screws to hold that brace in place. Pull your roof panel back off and then do your welds. Okay, now this is my rear brace. All I'm gonna do is just sit this over in place. Do this to sit right there. And now I'm gonna get the roof panel and we're gonna sit that roof panel into place. Now everything that's on this can be moved. If there's anything that's forward, back, we haven't welded anything, so we could just take the screws out and move it where we need to. So we're gonna line these body side panels up by the roof skin. Right, sit down, channel. All right, you just drop it. All right. Okay, now just by seeing it right here, see this humongous gap right here. Well, this piece right here will slide forward and flush up that right there. Now, as for this, obviously my roof skin is bent right here. Fix that. So now you can see right along this and all along the bottom of my roof panel, it is flat. I mean, perfect arch all the way around. Now I check my front, it is perfect all the way from one side to the other. So we'll go ahead and walk it around and show you exactly what I mean. Okay, so looking along that, you can see it is perfect all along that brace. Couldn't get no better. All the way down. Of course, this just clamp right there and be good to go. All right. Now, this right here sits flush against that. You can see right there where it goes down from my channel from my window. That fits great. Then going along the front, this right here will be pulled right down to that, just like so, and go all the way across it. Okay, well, there's a big jump in the video here. Got a little bit of a segment that's missing. Well, I'll explain exactly what we did. None of this stuff is welded up, so I'll explain what we've done to this part. All this stuff is sitting in place, clamped or screwed. Now, none of this stuff's welded. So the taillight panel already has line-up holes in the bottom. All you gotta do is just sit the taillight panel in place, put you a couple of screws in the bottom to hold it in place, and then you know that's where that pretty much should be. Now, as for the top, we've already videoed showing when we lined that top up with that center brace to get our sides pulled in. Okay, once we've done that, we wanted to see exactly, you know, where the quarter panels stand, and we put our trap door in and we've clamped it to the inner structure for the fastback part. Now, when doing that, wanted to make sure the quarter panels sit flush with this separation panel that goes in between the deck lid and the back glass. So we set it in place and we clamped it. We clamped the quarter panel, that trap door that holds the trunk hinges, and this filler panel in place. And we made sure we lined it up with the back of the quarter panel, and we made it as close as we could, metal to metal right through here. So we know that on both sides is where that should be. That's right, we've got the quarter panels clamped to the taillight panel. We did have to shave the outside edges of that taillight panel because it was contacting the quarters and it was just too much metal, needed to be trimmed loose. So we got that off. Everything kind of had to be worked, pushed, pulled, buckled, bowed, and everything else to get all this crap to where it needed to be. So you probably wouldn't have wanted to see all that in the previous video anyway. But we measured it from here, there, the top, down. And so far, from measuring from the top of the window down to the lower rocker, and on this side to that side, we're just a little bit off. So we're just a little bit pushed over to one side. So I'm gonna put a strap over there, and I'm gonna pull it to straighten the body up, make sure it's straight on both sides, and once it's straight, I'm gonna throw a weld to it, and that should make the body level. Now the floor pan's welded together, it's now level, I've leveled it up. So now all there is for the car to be leveled up is to pull everything tight, X mark it, and then start to weld everything together. I'm going to weld the braces in from the bottom just so that none of this stuff moves. When I go to take it off, I want to make sure it all stays where it needs to be. I'm going to punch all the holes in the roof panel and the quarter panels, and then once I put them back on, I know they're right there where they need to be. I'll lock them down, spot weld them, and then once all the sheet metal is all spot welded together, then we start putting inner tubs in, getting them all buttoned up, and then run with it from there. All right, now we've set our roof skin up here, and we've checked the sides to make sure they're right. Once doing that, we've screwed this right here from the bottom, we've put it in place, we've clamped it. Now we've got our roof skin off, we can go ahead and finish welding our roof braces since we know that they're exactly where they need to be. So we're going to finish welding the roof brace here and the front one because that's exactly where it needs to stay. I've got the car into position, everything is lining up correctly now. Well, we did have an issue over there where the drip rail was not lining up with a quarter, but we just made an adjustment to that inner structure of the piece that runs up to that drip rail, and we welded that and it fixed the problem. But now we know everything lines up pretty decent to where it's at right now. May have to make some minor, grind marks here, some cutting here just to get some things to fit a little bit tighter. But as it is, it's pretty much what it needs to be. Okay, well, I went ahead, I welded all my structure. As you can see here, I put a bar along the bottom of these A-pillars here to keep this right here exactly where it needs to be, because my window opening is exactly how it should be to put a glass in it. So that's going to be factory spec. I didn't want this to move when I pulled the upper cowl off. Well, now it's time to install this lower cowl. Now when we put this on, of course, I'm going to punch all the holes all the way around the sides, but around these vents here, those are going to have seam sealer put around them right here. So I'm going to be putting seam sealer around those. I'll also probably spread some seam sealer around the bolt holes here so that if any water, goes through those vents, of course, water's going to go through them. When the water does go through those, they're not going to be able to go inside the car. Those will be sealed off. You won't have any issue with any water getting in those. So I will do some seam sealer on those once I get this welded into place. So now it's time to knock some holes in it and get it set into place. Okay, I have my holes knocked into my lower cowling here. So I'm just gonna sit that into place. Now I'm not worried about what the sides look like. I'm gonna be lining up the cowl to these two firewall holes on both sides for the braces to go to the shock towers. I will line those up, and that's where I'm gonna get my center. Now, those are the center of the car, so that's what I'm doing now. Now I'm just gonna use this little end of the screwdriver, the hammer here, to line it up. Put a clamp. Alright. That up. I'll put a clamp. Alright. I know that's good. That looks good on both sides. Everything looks good here. It's up against my windshield edge just like it should be. So I know this is exactly where it needs to be. So I'm going to run some screws in it to hold it down into place. And then I'm going to start doing some welds. Now I'm going to get a hammer and dolly, and I'm going to hammer and dolly all the way around this so that I can make sure that it sits flush. Now I know it's sitting flush all the way across. I can go ahead and do my spot welds all along through here. Once I do that, I can pull my screws out, spot weld in where my screws is. Then we can start our seam sealing process, and then we'll shoot some paint on this right here, and then we'll put our top layer on of our cowl. Okay, we're gonna be using a 4164 part number. This is an Ultra Flex. This is brushable seam sealer and it's flexible. We have a little bristle brush and we're gonna be using that to go all along the inside here. We'll put some around those little studs for the bolts. Make sure that this right here is a watertight seal so no water can get in there when it runs through the vent. Now the reason for that, even though it is welded tight right there, it could, hey, look at my hair, ain't it nice? It could possibly, water could seep down in there and it drip down in the floor pan. You don't want that to happen. Or it could settle up in between these two pieces of steel and then cause rust and rot out like all the others in the world do. So that right there is now fixed. There's not gonna be any issue with any water getting into this car from this cowl. We'll also run seam sealer down the front as well. Now it's time to go ahead, knock some holes in that upper cowl and get it welded. Now before I put the upper panel on, I have some Moeller high heat. This is self-priming, withstands up to 1200 degrees. This is a spray-on aluminum paint. It's basically you spraying on thin coats of little aluminum shavings and the mixture and tacks off. Well, I'm gonna use this right here to coat the inside of this panel right here with it. It's also in gray, so don't ever have any issue under here. All right, now that it's coated, I can go ahead and let that tack off and dry, get my holes knocked in my upper cowl, get it on, get it welded, and that part will be done. I'm using the same coat of color here, and I'm coating the whole underside of this. If anyone's ever taken one of these off before, you notice it's all covered in rust. Well, we're gonna coat it before we put it on so that the bottom side of this is protected. We're gonna let that dry. We're gonna knock the holes in it, drill the holes in this lower section here, and then we'll get that on there welded up. Okay, I've knocked my holes in my cowl. Notice here, the holes are in the bottom, not this lip, because it welds straight down to that section there. So now I can set it right there into place. Line it up with these dowels right here just like I did before. Once I've done that, check everything, go ahead and clamp it, shoot some screws, go ahead and weld it. Okay, now I've welded in all the holes that I've punched. So this right here is pretty much done. All I gotta do is just lightly grind over the welds. Since I've spot welded them, they're already sitting pretty flat with the panel. Just grind over those, and whenever you do get ready to paint the car, just run you some seam sealer down the seam, and then it's pretty much good to go. But that's how it is. The cowl is now installed, upper and lower, and now we can start to go on to the next phase of it, which is gonna be cooler panels, roof skin, and everything else. Okay, well now we're gonna kind of assemble this. Now the front apron, the rear apron, and that shock tower, there's, right here you can see 3 bolt holes right here. So I went and picked up some 5/16 bolts, and I'm gonna bolt these together. I'm not gonna tighten them up, just gonna bolt them together, and then whenever I set these into place, that'll kind of hold all these 3 pieces kind of in place where they need to be. So that's what we're gonna be doing right now. I've got that piece there, and this piece here. Okay, now your apron is gonna sit on top of your center shock tower. So take your apron, and it will sit over the top of that, line the holes up. I've already went and picked up some bolts and washers here, so I'm good to go here. Okay, now we got our quarter panels on, we got our roof skin on, and we've got our drip rail on. Now some time has passed. I've been working on the Coyote car So this car's kind of been on the back burner, haven't been doing a lot to it. You can kind of tell that the front end's somewhat assembled on the car. Nothing's been welded, it's all just sitting in place. But on the back of the car here, we've got everything pretty much buttoned up the way we want it to be. So I'm just going to kind of give you a little rundown on what I've done to get it to that point from that previous video segment there. So let's go ahead and do a rundown of it. Okay, looking at the car right now, of course you see all this front end stuff. All these components is already on. I made this bracket system right here, this shock tire brace. I made it off a factory 67 so that I could tie it all in to get these sections here squared in where they needed to be. But none of that's all welded in yet. Of course, all this is finished in, upper, inner, outer, the cowl panel, all that's in. First thing you gotta do when you're putting quarters on, you've gotta make sure the doors are on first and lined up before you ever screw with the quarter. But up there on the top, I've drilled all my holes, or I've knocked them in it with my pop gun there. It makes my hose my hole punch. Knocked all of them in that, welded across here, and I've welded it across the top of the drip rail. The drip rail, of course, pushing it up flush with the top of that inner frame, and then knocking the hose in all the way down there and all the way down there. So the quarters, I've still got to finish welding in here. I've welded in some places, but I've still got to do a finish weld throughout here. Get my door shut there. Okay, the doors line up pretty darn good with the car, the way they should. These quarters have a little edge in them right here. That right there is in all of them. I'm just gonna get that and we'll roll it in, finish welding this. It's all welded on the inside, down through there, just a few tack welds. I've not put the inner and outer wheel tub in. I'll put that in after I get all the structure on the outside finished. I've knocked the hose in the top back here and I've welded it up. I've welded a quarter to the structure itself in there, and then ground those welds down, and then I welded the roof skin to the quarter panel. I've also knocked the holes all up there and all down here to weld the quarters to that inner frame. Back here to that taillight panel, that Shelby panel, this is not welded in yet. I've just screwed it in place, and this is just sitting in. It's just screwed in place at the bottom, but I can eyeball down through here. I can check everything throughout the car. Looks level, well, the camera's level, all the way down. This inner trap door, all that's set into place. I've got it clamped in. My separation panel here goes between the glass and the deck lid. It's in place. I've already set a deck lid on here, a Shelby deck lid, and it fits pretty close to where it needs to be. I've got my gaps right, so I know that I could weld this and it'll be where it needs to be. So now it's just a matter of getting everything finished in on this car. Got my doors on the car, got them lined up just like they need to be. Welded them at the front, welded them at the bottom, and I have a quarter panel on the car. Now back here, if you do not want to put a new taillight panel in your car, you don't have to worry about doing any of this right here, making sure your taillight panel's straight. You can put your quarter all the way up against your taillight panel and then screw it in. Mine's just kind of just dangling there, it's not on all the way. I've already made my hose preparations on the prep the bottom here to weld that in, so that'll all have to be done as well. Another thing you want to do is put a trunk lid on the car. It looks like everything's ready to go right here, but it's not. I'm going to take all this loose. I'm going to be sitting my trunk lid on the car first. I'm going to make sure the gaps are as nice as I can get them, and then once the gaps on both sides look good, I'll go ahead and I'll put a screw right here, and then that'll butt this right here to this, and I know this right here is exactly where it needs to go because, well, it can only go one way. But that's one thing you want to do. So that's pretty much it for the quarter panels. I've got them on the car. I've got them where they need to be. I do not have the inner wheelhouse in there yet. I will put those in here before I weld these bottoms in. I'll go ahead and sit them in place. Now with the AJ suspension, this right here will not be needed. So I had to go ahead, I went ahead and drilled this out. And that was the original perch there for where that spring mount went. That's no longer going to be used. Now you can see here where I put these stronger welds all the way down this, that's a whole lot stronger than just doing the plug welds. Plus there's a lot more area surface there that's going to be holding versus the other one. So we plan on putting something with a little bit more power than what this car come factory with. So stronger the welds, don't worry about flex. On the inside you can see where I welded from behind with all the remnants from the heat. I've welded all the way down right there, and I will grind that smooth, seam seal it. That'll look really nice. Same with the other side. This right here I did just like the factory, because that's one thing you will be able to see right there on the top. But everything is welded strong. I've welded down there at the bottom of the supports, and that's pretty much the whole front end. Getting it all together, getting it all, frame rails and everything put in place. Now this is another thing that's really nice to have. Another 1967 Ford Mustang that's pretty much all original to do your measurements off of. So that's what I did on this car right here. I had it, it was available to me, so I was able to do all my measurements for lengths, getting them right, widths of everything, which if you don't have all those, that's why I say go ahead and get that strut tower brace, because that'll put your strut towers where they need to be. Get your fenders, get them bolted on the car, that way you know everything is in line and where it should be. And you can even do that before you even weld the frame rails in. As long as everything is lined up by the fenders, the strut towers are lined up, everything else should go right into place. And if not, you can always tweak it later. Okay, now I've got my quarter panel set into place. I do not have the bottom or the taillight panel welded. It is still loose at the bottom and the back, so that I'll have room to pull the quarter panel out away from the car to fit this inner wheel tub and outer wheel tub in. Now what I've done, I went ahead and set this into place where it should have been, or where it should be, and I've clamped it all along this wheelhouse area here where it fits all the way tight, all the way against that wheelhouse there. And since that's tight, I put it up against the floor pan. This area right here, that's kind of got a bevel to it, that's going to be what sits into that floor section. And this part that sits out is what sits above the floor. So that's the part that gets welded, and that's the part that sits out. So I went ahead and I made my marks. I used my little hole punch right here. Pretty good little tool. Punched 3/8 holes, and I punched holes everywhere it needed to be punched. I went ahead and took this apart and then punched holes, put it back together. So what I'll be doing now is welding this inner and outer together. I've already made the holes all along this. Now a pretty good guide for getting this right here correct is these holes. You have the holes right there, and the one on the other side too, and those are already in it. So those right there, your line up right here on the bottom right there for your lining these up. So I'm gonna go ahead, get this right here welded together. I'm gonna grind those welds down and then put some primer over that, and then this right here will be ready to sit inside the car. I've welded my two pieces together. I've ground all the weld down, and now I'm using some 7008. This is Master Pro from O'Reilly's. This is weld through primer. I'm gonna go ahead and put some of this right here over my welds, keep them from rusting, and also so that I can still weld to it, because this upper lip has to be welded to the inner fastback structure. Okay, now this is the quarter panel, and this part here that you're looking at right here, this is the inner section of the frame. Now you can see all along here, there's holes from there all the way around. Well, that's going to be where I weld. I will put my inner structure in here, the inner and outer wheel tub, and I will clamp it along this inner lip right here, and then whenever I clamp it, I can weld through that, but not until I get the whole thing clamped into place. So now we'll turn around. Now we're looking at the section right here. This is the back part. The exhaust will come out through here. You can look straight into the car. Of course, you can see the little vents showing it's a 67. And I will knock a hole here as well, because my wheel tub will go down into this. So I'll knock a hole in the rocker, so it'll help my rocker and the quarter panel they'll both be attached to the inner lip as well right here. And then I'll go on the inside of the car and I will weld it along this lip right here. And the holes that I put in the back section, or the front section rather, of the wheelhouse, I will weld directly through to this inner rocker. So that's what's going to attach to that. And then the hose that I put in there will go all along the frame. Okay, now we're looking at the back section of the quarter panel. This is the lower, this is the side trunk drop, this is the driver's side, this is the trunk drop that the quarter panel will clamp to all the way down and then get welded. But there's a lip right through here on the wheelhouse that it'll weld to this right here. And of course, once you clamp it, weld to the end of the quarter, then all this back will be strong. And then along the frame as well, then it'll get welded right along this and along these right here, along that. There's a bracket that goes right there on that inside that welds to this and then down to the wheelhouse. And this right here welds directly to the lip. Okay, I have the wheel tubs here. These are standard size wheel tubs. If you do decide to do a wider tub, you can do that. You just have to cut a section of the floor out and drill welds out of this bracket right here. And then they give you a plate that you can put in to straighten up this wheel, the frame rail, so that you got more clearance. So let's go ahead and get these in place. Now what I'm going to put the front section in first. The front section will slide down into that rocker. So I'm just going to finagle it, and then the front section slide it down into place. Section here forward. Give me some more room. And then just whoop, pop it in. Okay, so now it's kind of sitting in place, but it's not where it should be. It's popped right in. It's just sitting in there right now. Now you can see the hose I put along this. It's just sitting in there. It's not where it should be yet, but you can see the hose that I've knocked in it all the way through here. Now that's the hose that will weld to that inner lip of that frame section. And then these are the hoses that I drilled for that inner rocker. So now this little beveled edge, this little bead roll, that will sit above your floor pan. So you can see it best if you look at it through the inside of the trunk. Okay, going in here, you see it's just kind of hanging out right now. I can pull it way on up. It should be. But you'll see this lip right here, once this is clamped to this inner floor, this lip will be above the floor pan. There's the front section. Okay, so now, getting it all clamped in. Looking at the front, you want to make sure this right here is all the way up against your inner rocker and all the way down. It should be tight all the way against it. Now once this is pulled to right there, it will be against my quarter. But that's just a little bit of a guide there. You can see my hole that I've drilled along through here is right level with my inner frame structure. And now, guide for the back, this is going to attach to that. This right here's got to go in quite a bit, and then your quarter will slide up to that. So once this right here is pulled forward, well, you can see how easy it goes forward, then this can be clamped to that. It should be level here with the bottom of the quarter, and then this right here will be pulled up to it just like so, and you can clamp it in. And that'll give you your guide, then you can go ahead and weld it into place. Okay, now that I've got it all clamped in everywhere it should go, of course I gotta clamp it again right here and tighten it up. I'm gonna clamp and weld as I go to make sure everything is all the way flat against all my lips. But first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put a weld here. I'm gonna burn that in real good, weld up here, weld right here, and I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna work my way around.